Hey everyone, today in this episode of the Bionicle Inspiration Series we're going to be talking about Maturin, which you probably know if you read the title of the episode. Basically, we're just going to take a look at a whole bunch of different Maturin designs and really focus in on different ways that you can really pack in detail and really bring these little tiny characters to life, because often it can be a little bit harder to really pack in detail and really pour in a whole sense of character and really find really unique techniques when you have a lot less space to work with, because of course Matoran are very small builds. So let's take a look at a whole bunch of different examples of Matoran and see a few different ways that you could approach one yourself if you're planning on building one. So let's get started, shall we? The first Matoran build we've got today is called Matoran Rusty. Great little name for a Matoran. And this is by Diego Corridera. So one thing I really love about this is, just like I said, how much detail you can actually pack into this small space. But you do have to get a little bit creative, really think outside the box. So definitely a fun challenge if that's something you want to try, you really want to improve upon some of your skills, is to focus in on something like that. Work in your smaller spaces and try and pack in as much as you can, because it's not easy. But if you think creatively, you might be able to do it. Anyway, so how's that being done here? Well, we can see the asymmetry on this mock, some of the brown armor details on this character. It looks like he's sort of wearing a little bit of extra armor, but it's only on sort of one side of his body there. You know, he's looking cool. He doesn't need his armor to be practical. He's just totally fine if his armor just covers his hand and his shoulder there, because it looks cool. But I like that idea. It's just a nice way of just adding that nice little bit of asymmetry, really kind of spicing up the character a little bit. I think it just works super well, in my opinion here. So I like the idea of doing that, playing a little bit with asymmetry, finding unique ways that you could armor up the Matoran, and really paying attention to some of the color blocking. Maybe the armor is a different color there, so you can kind of really layer that on top with a different layer of color. And as we can see here, I think it works really well. Something else that I like is the addition of the chain that's kind of wrapped around the body. You know, I think the description here said, Rusty is the main partner of Boko in his quest for gold in the mines. Poor Rusty isn't really clever, so he is usually cheated by Boko at the time of distributing the profits. I'm sorry to hear that you're being cheated out of money, good sir, but hey, you're a cool-looking character. But like I said, yeah, he mentioned mines and stuff. So I like the idea that he's got this chain wrapped around him that, you know, I don't know, you could use that chain for whatever purposes it needs to be used while he's mining. So I like the idea that he's really kind of paid attention to the backstory, paid attention to some of the details of this character, and found different ways that you can kind of incorporate that into the actual physical design there. That's really clever and really fitting here. I also like, too, you can see some of, on this mock, there's these two lightsaber rod bar pieces that are just on the front there. They kind of form this almost V shape on the torso. I don't quite know what that is looking, or like kind of meant to look like, but I think it just looks nice. And honestly, the way I see it, I kind of almost see it as like little overalls, like a little overalls that a miner might wear when they're mining away. And I honestly really like that. So that's kind of fitting. And again, a really great way of really specifically focusing in on details that allow the mock to better showcase its backstory, better showcase its history, who he is, what he does, all that sort of stuff. It's really fitting and really cool. I also like the little tiny addition of this little spanner here on his legs, just simply attached into that Hero Factory CCBS armor piece there with a clip. Again, a fun little detail, makes total sense for his backstory. Perfect. And a great looking weapon as well. So yeah, a lot of really nice stuff going on here, and it's great that it's really being tied back into the backstory there. Awesome to see. So a great little Matoran design. Let's move on to another Matoran design. This one here is by the All-Seeing Eye, and this mock is called... Well, I was wrong. This mock is by Dr. Toxic. This is his mock here. The All-Seeing Eye is who this guy is on Discord. But this mock is called the Mad Matoran of Matanui. Love a good bit of alliteration there. That's fantastic. The old Mad Matoran of Matanui. That's good. It's good. And this guy certainly does look like a fun little Mad Matoran here, and I actually really adore that. I think that's fantastic. Always good to see a lot of kind of character really packed into a character here. And how has he done that? How's he packed all this character in? Well, I think there's two ways. One, he's given this mask big, weird, googly eyes. And I think that's fun. I think that's clever, because it makes him look like he's really a little bit crazy, a little bit cuckoo, and that's the point. He's a mad Matoran. So I like that. Also, it's just a fun way of kind of sprucing up that mask a little bit, just sort of jamming in some pins there and putting the studs on top to give it really pronounced kind of googly eyes almost. Personally, I really like that. You know, it's just a more unique way of approaching it. You could argue that's illegal, putting them in that fashion, but who cares? It still looks good, doesn't it? So I like that. That's certainly one way of giving him a bit more personality. But also, as you can see from these pictures, he has a whole variety of chainsaws and flamethrowers and other deadly weapons. And the way that he is holding them in these pictures, he looks pretty crazy and hungry to do malicious things with those weapons. And I think that's really cool because it's showing a lot of character. So I like that. Always pay attention to how you pose and take the pictures when you post your mock there, because you can really showcase a lot about the character, who they are, what they do, their personality. All that sort of stuff can be conveyed there for sure. I still love too, by the way, just the notion of that, building very large weapons for your Matoran characters, because it's almost more comical when a really tiny guy has a massive weapon. It can just be really fun, and we'll see a few more examples of that later. But also too, you know, weapons are really fun to build. Don't be afraid to go super ham on them when you're building any kind of mock. And especially with a sort of smaller Matoran build like this, some of the weapons could really be some of the strong focal points on this on that kind of mock. So something to pay attention to, something to think about, because I think it works really well here. I also like too just the general construction of the Matoran itself. I think the weapons really are the focal point, but let's talk about the Matoran. He's using some Borok arm pieces and some of the other kind of limb pieces that actually appeared on some of the Voyanui Matoran sets as well. Never be afraid to take a look at some of the Matoran sets that did exist, because some of those Borok limb pieces were even used on actual Matoran sets. Definitely pay attention to some of the construction of Matoran from sets, because there's a lot you can learn from it for sure. And hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Why not take a bit of inspiration from that? Whether you want to straight up copy that Matoran design and just change up the colors, add a few of unique details that you yourself want to add, or it's just a great way of doing the limbs. It works. Why not? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's a good idea. Add your own spice to it always. It's a fun thing to do as well. So yeah, something to consider. All right, let's move on to this next Matoran mock, and this is by Toa Kaon, and it's called Kua and Vigrid. These are Matorans of Kazani. So I always love adding a little bit of cloth on pretty much any Bionicle mock, but hey, adding some cloth on this guy here, I think is a really nice addition. You know, that Ray cloth piece is just such a brilliant cloth piece. And honestly, I see it a lot on Bionicle mocks. It's just a really good piece to have. So if you ever spot one of those Ray CCBS Ultra Build Star Wars Bionicle sets in your local Targets or toy stores or Goodwills or whatever, definitely be sure to buy them, because they're I think that cloth piece is just really helpful, honestly. Or you could head over to Bricklink or something, buy it yourself that way. I just think it's a really versatile piece, and we see it being used here well. He has this kind of cool looking sort of scarf or just sort of shawl or something. It just works well. Just it helps to add a little something extra to the mock, Just add a little bit more depth, add a little bit of something. It's nice. Also, the construction on this green and yellow Matoran here, very similar construction to the last one we saw. Very sort of not overly complex limbs, but because this Matoran are naturally smaller, it just still works. Using these very, very tiny yellow CCBS bone pieces here, and then combining them with a few sockets to attach on two different limbs. And of course, you have the illegal technique, which I think is really helpful for these sort of smaller builds, because you can get a bit of posability out of it, which is getting two of those socket pieces, putting them together, and then feeding a pin through the middle there, which, yes, definitely illegal. There's definitely some stress being put on those pieces there, which, may not be so healthy for those hand connector pieces, but it's a cool technique. You get some posability out of it, and it allows you to get, I don't know, it's just those two pieces being put together. It's not that large, so it's just good for the size limitations, So it's something to play around with if you want to go down that route, of course. And then let's take a look at the blue and black Matoran here. I do really like the shoulder connection that he's got. The fact that out of the torso comes two ball joints, then from there you put a hand connector on, and then on that hand connector you put another ball joint, just so you get a little bit of extra posability onto a shoulder there. It also kind of helps to buff out the torso a little bit if it's a little bit skinnier. It just looks good, in all honesty. So, yeah, great way to get a bit of posability, and just a more unique way of approaching a sort of shoulder design there, as well as sort of approaching the torso design. It's a symbiotic circle. You must see it. So, yeah, it's good. The two kind of work in unison there, as you buff out the torso, but you also complement the arms. It's good. So yeah, that's solid. I love too the little antenna that's popping out of his back here as well. Just, I don't know, he's got some backpack on or something. Maybe he's a little scout, or I don't know, he does some sort of communication. Yeah, maybe, I don't know. That's kind of what I see. He's got that antenna on his back. Maybe he's like a little scout. He goes out. If he sees something shady out there, he lifts up that antenna and he contacts home and he says, hey, you know, something bad's happening. And then suddenly communication cuts out and he's like, communication disruption can only mean one thing: invasion. You know, and he heads on back, tells the Toa, and they go defend it. Look, so much story, so much personality packed in, just using one piece. One piece. It already tells a story. And look, maybe that's the crazy story that Ben Cossy sees and you don't see that. But hey, those little details, they always go a long way, you know? They can say so much. So there you go. That's cool. Speaking of little details that say a lot, let's move on to this next MOC by Max with 2 X's. Because if something has an X in it, it's awesome. But Max has 2 X's in it, so it's even cooler. And this is Ice Miner Matoran! Exclamation mark. Heck yeah. I love this. I love this a lot. I love that he's got this little like mining helmet light thing on the top of his mask there. Such an adorable, brilliant little detail there. Perfect for a miner. And also so perfect because it makes use of the natural holes that exist in that mask. You know, some of your earlier masks had just kind of random holes and things in them. And ironically, a lot of them you could actually put pieces in. It's, you know, debatable whether or not that's illegal. I don't know how much those were intended to be, you know, placing pieces in. But you can still place pieces in some of them. So really great idea to do that. Put some connector little clip pieces there into the natural holes in that mask and use it to build up a few other things to put the little light on the top of his head. Just a great way of showcasing that he's a miner there. I think that's perfect. I love too, because he said he's an ice miner. I like he's white because he's a Matoran of ice. That's fitting with the canon. But also, he's got the little bits of yellow there, which I think very much fit the fact that he's a miner, you know, the caution, you know, you're heading into a mining zone, there's, you know, construction or digging, all that sort of stuff. Those sort of vehicles and things like that are often yellow in color. So I think it's a very fitting color scheme that has a lot of kind of meaning behind it, you know. I like that a lot. And I can't ignore his awesome weapon, big old pickaxe like that. Looks fantastic, great little design there, works well, you know. Another great idea there too, you know, you want to build a character that's a miner. What sort of things would a miner typically have? The light on their helmet and a pickaxe. Let's put that in, boom, your Matoran or any MOC is complete. And then paying attention a little bit to the color scheme, how can you bring some meaning back into that? Great ideas. All there. Little fun concepts that you yourself could easily implement in some fashion. You pack a lot of good little juicy details there into your MOC. Really cool. Next MOC, it's by Shubi 4000. And this is known as Matoran Villages. So what I like so much about this is I feel like this MOC is really kind of, whether it's deliberate or not, again, this is what I'm seeing on the MOC. I feel like there's a nice story behind just the general look of this character. I see a whole kind of culture behind them. Some sort of culture that has really cool kind of pink weapons, whether that's for some sort of ceremonial or ornate reasoning or just sort of the colors of the area. But also just the kind of cloak that he naturally wears there because of maybe a harsher climate or something. Hey, again, that cloak is a ray cape. Great piece. Lots of awesome uses that you can have for it. But yeah, I just love that. You get this nice sense of like a culture or a location or just, I don't know, just sort of backstory elements because he is wearing this cool cloak. It has very unique weapons. I don't know. It's something you could easily do to kind of tie it back to a larger story for sure. I definitely love... you know, like I said, the fact that he has a lot of purple on him. The purple really stands out in contrast with the tan and dark tan there. That's just some nice contrast. And also really cool to be using some of those purple pieces. A lot of them came on Ninjago sets. So, hey, if you got a lot of Ninjago lying around, or heck, even if you just got some nice purple pieces, great idea to have them really pop on a MOC like this. Honestly, I think it just works really well. So, something to consider. Additionally, too, I like that this MOC is actually naturally larger. You know, typically Matoran are very small. This one's a little bit more on the Toa side of things in terms of height, but I don't think that's a problem, actually, you know? Who says that your Matoran needs to inherently be super small to be a Matoran? Because that's kind of the only rule with them being a Matoran, right? Is that they're tiny, right? That's just what always happened. But you don't need to follow those rules. You can make them quite large if you want to. Why not? You know? Or just make them a little bit larger than normal. And so what? They could still be a little bit shorter, on the shorter side there, but, you know, they don't have to be super, super tiny. do what you please, but do what brings you joy, you know? Yeah. So I like that about this guy. It's really cool. Yeah. I also like, too, that he's using those slicer head pieces as feet here. Very fitting looking foot design there. Works really well. I think a lot to love about this character. Some nice stuff going on for sure. Next one. This is by Matt Goldberg, and it's called Matoran Gatlin Turret. So, you know what they say. You speak softly and drive a big tank, you know? I think, this may not be a tank. It's more sort of like a turret of sorts. But I think that's such a great idea. Building a little Matoran, giving them a big old weapon to accompany them, because it just adds a nice little bit of flair to the Matoran. Because the Matoran could be just okay, but when you give it a cool big gun, then he starts to get a bit more personality. Then he starts to really pop, and it just becomes a kind of more complete overall mock, I guess, to some degree. Not that you need to give your Matoran a big old weapon, but I think it certainly helps to make them look a lot cooler, that's for sure. Yeah, we spoke before about how cool a big weapon can look and what it can communicate, so this is another good example of that. But yeah, this big old turret, I think it looks fantastic. The fact that it's got that scope piece from Gully Mystica, that looks brilliant on there. It's a great little addition, really makes sense on a turret like this. The stud shooter as well, makes sense. It's a big old turret. You could easily make it actually fire those studs, which, fun little play feature. And also it's got the little death counter piece that came on some of the Glatorian sets, that little sort of turny wheel piece that had the printing of, like, I think 1, 2, 3, 4. I think it ended on 5, and then it had the skull for number 6 there. I might remember those numbers wrong. Don't at me, I don't know. But hey, I like that idea too. There's got a little counter for the amount of people that he's hit with the turret or something. Or that's maybe like the intensity setting, It's like, we're going to turn this one up to all the way up to number 5. It's going to hit really hard, something like that. I like that idea. Just, again, a fun little detail. The little details, they go such a long way. Now, onto the Matoran here. I feel like the color blocking on here, I think it's trying to say something. I like it. He's a dude that's teal naturally in color, But I almost see that he's got little brown shoes. He's got nice little gray pants, maybe nice little like suit pants or something. And then he's wearing this jacket that's sort of tan, Tan goes over the top of his body there. Although he's got a bit of teal on his waist and his on his hip as well. So I don't know if he's just necessarily butt naked on the whole torso there. So maybe my theory's wrong. But I did like the idea that he's kind of wearing this sort of nice tan jacket and some suit pants and some shoes or something like that. I don't know, I just thought that was fitting. So, you could easily focus your color scheme on something like that, making them actually look like they're wearing more kind of human clothes, that they've that are kind of color coordinated in that regard. Certainly a way of approaching a color scheme could work for you. But yeah, there you go. I think this is a fantastic, really well-built mock. On to the next mock now. This is by Toa Ka-on. And this is Doku, Matoran of Kazani. So, one thing I like about this is the fact that he kind of has this robot arm, sort of a little rusted at the top even. It's just really cool. But what I like so much about it is that if you do want to do that, you're kind of struggling to add a little bit more detail into such a small Matoran space like this. I love the idea of doing that, just slightly changing the color scheme on one part of the mock to give it a bit of asymmetry there. And that's kind of all you need to do, and it spices it up a lot. The arm design here, for the most part, looks fairly similar to the other arm, but he's just changed the color scheme, and it suddenly looks like he's got a robotic limb. Simple change, it's all you need to do, but it's started to make it look like something else. So can you do that yourself? Find a way of introducing a little pop of color that can really make something look even more unique, or suddenly change the context of something. It stops looking more flesh-like and starts to look more robotic, like we see here, Small changes that go a long way. So like to the leg design on this mock, you can see the so essentially there's that 1x2 lift arm piece that's kind of connecting the socket to that kind of lower tan connector piece as well. But you notice there's that slight curve, and how's he got that curve? Well, he's cut some flex tubing and just sort of fed that through. So it's debatable whether that's legal or illegal. Probably illegal if you're cutting pieces, I guess. But there's debate about cutting flex tube because some sets ask you to do it. But still, not a bad idea to do that. If you want to cut some flex tube to some really small, little itty bitty measurements there, it could allow you to make some new attachments onto pieces, or get a little bit of posability on certain pieces as well. Because instead of feeding an axle through so that the piece won't move, you feed that rod in there so that it can move. something to think about. It's an interesting way of kind of playing around with parts so that you can get a little bit more posability. I mean, heck, you could use some of those 3 long bar pieces as well. Those might work, so you don't have to be cutting your flex tube there. You could just use some of the pre-existing bar pieces. See what you can do with those. Something to consider for sure. So yeah, some lovely stuff going on this Matoran. But let's move on to the last MOC. And this is, I think, a fantastic looking Matoran. This is by Strage, and it's called Tway the Pathfinder. So I love this. He's got an eye patch. Need I say more? End of conversation. This MOC has won. It's brilliant. Not that there's ever like a winner in a Abyss episode, not necessarily, but honestly, any MOC that has an eye patch is a 10 out of 10 for me. I love a good eye patch, and you just don't see them, man. It's not an easy thing to do. But hey, all they've done here, got a black rubber band, whether that's an official black rubber band or you just go to the store and buy a non-Lego rubber band, because black rubber bands that came with Lego sets, those things were brittle, man. Those things broke. But then he's got one of the lever pieces, taken out the actual lever from it, just put the base there, fed the rubber band into it, shoved it on the mask, and you got a really good eye patch design there. Beautiful. Something you could easily do yourself for the most part, and get a really cool eye patch. I love too that he's got this kind of like infected like shadow arm and shadow leg of some sort. I don't quite know what that is. There's no description on Flickr, so who knows. But I love that. Again, a little bit of asymmetry, a little bit of story context. It goes a long way. Also love too this sort of leafy waistcoat that he's got there. Never underestimate some of those plant pieces. You can definitely do a lot with them. And hey, it works well as this sort of almost sort of dress design here. And the fact that those are attached with rubber bands too, that's also something to consider. Do you actually need to attach something? You could just have it be supported by a rubber band. Yeah, if that's something you want to do. Maybe you actually want it to all be connected so things aren't sort of falling off or anything, or aren't sort of more delicately placed or anything. You know, that's completely up to your own building preferences. But hey, I think that's a good idea. Just a new interesting way of finding connections is through rubber bands. Something to consider. Some great weapons on this MOC as well, and just overall a really awesome aesthetic. I think this is a really shining example of a very small MOC with a lot of details packed in. Whether that's from the limbs that have a bunch of tires on them just to add a little something to them, or just the asymmetry and some of the other fantastic details on it. It's really well built. Really enjoy it. So that's it for a whole bunch of Matoran in this Matoran-themed Bionicle Inspiration Series episode. I do hope you enjoyed, and hopefully you've been inspired if you're looking to build a Matoran or two. So if you liked the MOCs you saw in today's episode, be sure to check the links in the description below. You can see links to all of the MOCs you saw today, and you can follow the links even further and check out some of the other stuff these builders have done, because, you know, if they're this good at building that sort of stuff, who knows what else they've made. Additionally, as well, if you want to submit some of your own MOCs to the show, you can do that through the submission email that'll be on your screen right now. You just have to send me any information you want to put in the email, any pictures, all that sort of stuff, and then one day it'll appear on the show. But, you know, I've got a lot of submissions to work through, so your patience is, of course, key. But I'll do my best to make it appear when I can. And hey, maybe you're sitting and you're like, man, I've been waiting months and Ben hasn't featured my submission. Don't be afraid to send me an email. I'm not too opposed to getting a gentle reminder of like, hey, did you get my submission? I'd like to see it. You know, I don't always reply to the did you get my submission messages, because, you know, then if one person says it, then 20 people will say it, and then I got a lot of messages to catch up on and stuff. And, you know, I'm a busy little beaver. It's a time thing. But hey, you know, it's okay. If you do want to send a little reminder, as long as you're respectful in that reminder, I'll let you know. So yeah, there's that. Additionally, check the links in the description below to see some of my social media if you are so interested. That includes my Patreon, where you can have access to Patreon-exclusive podcasts. There's one released every week. I actually got a good backlog of them now. I almost got like 25 episodes of those out now. So, hey, if you really enjoy listening to stuff while you build, and you want a whole bunch of content to listen to while you build, all you got to do is sign up for Patreon, and you can do that. You know, it's as little as $1 a month. And heck, if you really want, you can do that once, listen to them all, and sign off when you're ready. You know, come and go as you please. You know, yeah. So there you go. You know, check out Patreon if you're interested. There's a whole bunch of exclusive content there waiting for you, and other my social media as well. You can check out some of the other stuff I've built as well. So there you go. That's it. Hopefully you enjoyed. Thank you very much. We'll see you in the next episode. Happy building. Bye for now.